We all have those little voices inside of our head sometimes that stop us from giving our best performances when we're on set or on the stage. But how can you recognize them and exactly what that voice is actually afraid of so that you can stop it and do what you're supposed to do when you're on set? Well, those are just some of the questions that I got into with the director, Kim Farrant, who is best known for directing no less than Nicole Kidman and Hugo Weaving in her film Strangerland, and also the film Angel of Mine, starring Noomi Rapace and Ivan Strahovski. This was a really insightful conversation. We got into all sorts of things, especially delving into her past and how her super unconventional upbringing has influenced her directing style, as well as how to navigate the fine line between fear and instinct. So without much further ado, let's get into it. So you started off in film school. Well, you started off as an actress and a dancer, right?
I started my creative explorations in dance, and I studied with Anna Halpern at Malpa Institute in Marin County. So it was like on the side of a mountain for a year, just doing the most wonderful and amazing explorative healing dance work. And one day when we were there, we got to speak while we were dancing. And I was like, oh, this is like acting. And I was like, oh my God, that felt so good to be able to like also use my voice. And so then I did a little like research, and then I applied for acting school after doing some like short courses and stuff. And I went and I studied with Eric Morris at American Theatre in LA for a year. And then I studied at the Actors Center in Australia for a year. And while I was at the Actors Center, I had another unusual experience where, this was a very long time ago, but one of the teachers rocked up drunk, and they're not like that at all these days. But back then, this was, unfortunate. And so the head of the school said, Kim, would you like to direct the play today? And I was like, sure. And I think he could tell, like I've always been like a strong presence and a leader kind of energy. And so I started directing the play that day, and it was the first time ever I felt like I was like truly in my skin.
Yeah.
And that I was myself, and that I was like, and I didn't know it at the time, but it was just coming through me. I was like a vessel. And that just gave me like, oh, okay, I want to direct. But I kept acting.
Can I ask you? I just want to drill in there a little bit. Was it the connection with the actors, or was it sort of being the conductor? What was it that lit you up so much?
I think it's both. What I have is sight. I can see where energy is blocked in a body.
Could you see that before?
I don't know. I just the opportunity to see it in the context of people were acting, and then I was like, oh wow, like that's blocked. And now back then I was like 19, like 20 or something. No, okay. I think I was 22 at that point. I didn't have the language for that. I didn't know what I was seeing. I didn't know that I was seeing blocked energy. I was just helping it move. And then only later in my life have I understood, like, oh, wow, like that's what was going on. Like I could see where energy was stuck, or where energy was off, or where energy like needed to explode, and it just allowed me a space to use my gifts, like to help it move. And so I kind of got the bug for it there. And then I kept acting for a little bit, did like short films and some commercials and video clips and all of that stuff, but I kept writing. And then I started making short films, made a couple of short films that, did well. One of them had Hugo Weaving in it. And then they got me into film school. So then I did 3 years studying at the Australian Film, Television and Radio School.
So how did you get Hugo in your film before you had even gotten into film school? Did you know him?
Yeah, I'd met him through a mutual friend, and I just approached him and I said, this would be one day out of your life. It would mean the world to me.
Yeah.
He was playing a man who was attempting to kill himself, but then got interrupted by his young son. And it was
Mm.
just like a really powerful, beautiful scene. We made that entire short, it was 7 minutes long, for $7 for a barrel of hay, and everything else was free. All the trucks with all the gear, everyone donated their time. My cute mum did the catering. It was less like, back in the day when you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you'll do anything kind of thing. And yeah, it was awesome. And the one before that was a film called Beloved with Zoe Carides and John Paulson. And they're both actors, but John's also a director now. And John was my flatmate, and we were all like hanging out around the Tropicana Cafe and like making short films. And so I like, made this short, and that got into a lot of festivals, and it was a really funny black comedy, dark thing. And I got a lot of sponsorship for it because they were both well-known television actors. So everything just started flowing.
But
And then
you have to even know that to ask for sponsorship. I think that was really like,
I had a lot of drive. I still do. Like, I'm
Yeah.
very like, how do I make this happen? I'm one of those people. I read an astrology book once that said like my negative traits were unrealistic. Like that was one of my unrealistic.
Wait, what's your sign?
Cancer.
Okay.
I'm a triple Cancer, sun, moon, Venus. Anyway,
It's
very
this month, isn't it? Or was it last month?
I just had my
Okay.
birthday.
Happy birthday.
But thank you. So this negative trait was unrealistic, but I actually think it's been one of my best traits because I so think big. I so think anything's possible, and I still do. I so like shoot for the stars in that way. And sometimes it lands, and crazy miraculous stuff happens. Like I got all the camera gear for free. I got all the editing for free. I got the sound mix for free. I got all the stock. Back then we were shooting on 35 mil. My first film ever, a sex scene on 35 mil. What was I thinking? But it was all donated. So it was like, I had a lot of passion and drive and like anything.
Chutzpah.
And chutzpah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I believe in that spirit, of like especially when you're younger and you're just like, you don't know that there's a limitation. So why butt up against it? Just go for it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, it's good that when you're young, you don't realize that the world doesn't think you should do it that way, whatever, but, and that you just keep doing your things, right? And you don't know that there are limits, I think, when you're young.
And I always say to actors, there's no one way. There's never one way. A lot of actors ring me for advice or ask me, like, should I go to Hollywood? Should I wait till I've got more on my show reel? And I'm like, there's no one way.
Yeah.
You'll hear so many voices. Just follow yours. Follow that inner wisdom, that inner knowing that knows no matter what, I need to be there. Or like, actually, you know what, right now I need to build more on my show. Or like, whatever it is, like that will be your path. Yeah. So I'm very much like anti-establishment, anti-rules. Know what the rules are so that you can break them, but don't just abide by them because that's what someone else said, because that's their experience. Your experience might be totally different.
Absolutely. I have always been a rebel. But
love it.
So I have a question about that, though, because I think so many times that voice shows up and it's actually fear trying to keep you small.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you know if it's the fear trying to keep you small, trying to protect you? That's what I always say, right? It's trying to protect me. Thank you. It's okay if I fall on my face, right? You just get back in your corner where you belong.
Yeah.
Yeah. But because that voice is smart, it shows up as logic, and it does say things like, work on your reel a little bit more, establish yourself here first. Well, it says all sorts of things, right? It says different things to different people. You're too old. That's what my voice says.
That's a classic one.
Yeah, it
You're
is. It really is.
too old for what? Like,
Exactly. I'll be older tomorrow and I still won't.
actors are playing human beings, and human beings live until they're 100, live until they're 110. Like, you're never
Yeah.
too old.
But do you have any way to sort of specifically know if that's the voice of fear or the voice of wisdom?
Um, I suppose the different check-ins that I use for myself and also ask when working with actors is like, what's it feel like in your body when you hear that voice? Does it feel like a clenching? Does it feel like you're tightening? Does it feel like your neck's getting like, constricted? Does it feel expansive? Does it feel good? Does it feel like it's literally from your mind? Like, can you feel your head
Mm,
buzzing thought? Or is it coming from a place of, this makes no sense, but it feels true. And therefore I'm going to follow this. So it's
mm,
like really that in listening to the body wisdom. And the mind is miraculous and so clever and so powerful and so helpful. But it's not always going to give us the right guidance. We can mind fuck about something and just go round and round and round.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think that that's what so many actors do, right? I also coach actors on their career, and 90% of the time it's just fear. Fear. It's not that they're not talented. It's not that it's just that they've got that little voice or those limiting beliefs or that inner child that wants it, but somehow, they're still listening to a parent that's maybe even long dead. But
Yeah.
it's there
So
and
we
it's
work a lot.
powerful.
We work a lot with, what are the voices? What are the beliefs? Where'd you learn them? How they
Mm,
play in life? What are the consequences of living by them? How is that impacting your vision for your life? Um, and then when do you feel like a voice is coming from a very young part of you that's frightened? And it's like you want to listen to the fears because you don't want to override your child. You don't want to put your child in unsafe situations that would be a threat to your, well-being. But at the same time, if it's coming from scarcity or a fear that's like from a trauma, then it's like, oh, okay, now I need to attend to my inner child. I need to
mm,
reassure them. I need to make them safe so that then my adult is making the decisions for my life. And, I too completely fall short in when it comes to, my own life, and be it things in my personal life or in my career. And then I have other moments where I'm like so clear and so like just following the internal guidance and not corrupted by old stories or, limiting paradigms.
yeah.
So, but it's a daily practice of relating to the different parts and being able to understand, when my little one's really up and triggered and fear-based, like I can usually sense it by the quality of how it feels in my body. Does it
Mm,
feel like a tightening in my gut, or does it feel like a closure over my heart, or does it feel like my head is spinning? And
yes. Yeah.
and then there's certain phrases, like, which is why journaling is a really powerful tool of like, what if is usually fear, right? So if I find myself writing, what if it fails, or what if I don't, achieve it, or what if that person doesn't love me, or, whatever it is, that's usually coming from fear. So it's like, okay, then it's easy to identify the voice. And then I
Mm,
know that's not the voice I'm going to act from, but I definitely need to work with that voice and listen to it and spend some time with it before I act, so that we're all congruent, all the parts of me, and
yeah.
making the decision with, equal kind of share and understanding. And yeah, we're on the same page moving
Yeah.
forward. We're not leaving the little child terrified behind, you know.
Did you study Gestalt therapy at all?
I've never studied Gestalt, but I've done Gestalt therapy, and I've also been I grew up with a psychiatrist, primal scream father.
Mm.
And then my mom was a counselor. And so, you know, I've grown up, we had a red padded cell in our house. Like I've grown up with therapy. And I've done a lot of different therapies, from primal scream to rebirthing to a lot of somatic work to a lot of breath work, Hoffman, 12-step, like a lot of different modalities, and very much feeling-based therapies, you know, somatic practices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
You know,
only asked because that's very typical in Gestalt, right? Where you picture yourself as a little kid and what would you say to this child and how would you protect them and how would you show up for them and all of that. Yeah. What drew you to San Francisco initially? You were 19, you said?
well, it was Anna Halpern. I'd heard about this woman who cured herself. I think she was in her 30s or 40s when she got cancer through dance. And I was like, this is incredible. Like, I want to go and be a part of that. And I'd already been on quite an alternative path. Like I'd spent 8 years in a commune. And at that point, I think it was six years at that point. So I'd, you know, like been exposed to quite a lot of unusual modalities of therapy and also meditation and, you know, alternative dance practices, Osho Kundalini, Osho Nataraj, dynamic, like all these things. So when I heard about Anna Halpern and how she had healed herself and her body just through movement and sound, I was like, I want some of that. That sounds amazing. And I was, you know, like I went through high school whilst I was also in this commune. And
Was
it
that
was
with
really,
your parents?
sorry?
Was that with your parents as well? You were in high school?
No, it was with my mom.
Uh-huh.
And so that my parents had separated. So I found it hard to do life in a conservative, normal, mainstream manner, like just schooling. I loved schooling and I was a straight A student and loved it and really thrived on the structure of it. I was also exploring like other realms of like meditation and, you know, studying the Buddha and Jesus and like all these kind of spiritual figures and learning through practicing meditation and doing like, I remember once doing a workshop in calligraphy, and like every 30 minutes a bell would sound and we could do one stroke. And then we put the calligraphy, you know, paintbrush down and then meditate for another 30 minutes. And then it was like over a period of a whole day, we did like 8 strokes, but we just meditate like all day. So I'd just been exposed to like so many alternative things, that going to a school, wearing a uniform, you know, like putting ribbons in my hair and like having to, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, you know, like getting graded against everyone. Like it just didn't fit for me.
Yeah.
So I actually spent, after I left high school, and the last year I ended up in the commune in India for my like holiday break before the last year of high school. And then I just decided never to come back. And I just rang my dad saying, oh my God, like I'm in the school of life. I don't need school. And he was like, get back here now. I was like, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. The phone. And I just never went back to school. And then 10 years later, I rocked up to film school, you know, college, so excited, so passionate, so ready. Like that was my journey. I went out into the world. I studied dance. I studied acting for 2 years. I'd made short films, you know, like I traveled a lot. And then I was ready to like be in an institution, but I had a lot of myself by then and I knew what I wanted to do. And I had some life. And my father died. I'd done a whole lot of living away from home since I was 16. Like it was just a different path. So, you know, again, like I so support actors in like trusting that their path will be what they need, as opposed to you have to do it this way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, that definitely is an unconventional background. Are you so close with your mom?
My mum passed a couple of
Oh,
years. Yeah,
yeah.
so I'm an orphan. Yeah, I was very close with my mom, and then she died a couple of years ago when I went home to see her for the first time in 2 years after COVID. And then
So you got a chance to see her.
I saw her, and then she died the next day. She
She waited for you.
waited for me.
Yeah. Are you an only child?
No, I have three brothers.
Are you close with them as well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Are they also artistic?
One of them's a closet, I would say, writer, cartoonist, but he doesn't share it with the world, but he should. He's amazing. And the other is a chiropractor, and the other is like a not an artist, non-emergency,
So he
non-emergency
rebelled.
ambulance driver. So
Ah,
we're a
okay.
very strange mix. Yeah.
Yeah, very different. Yeah. But I find that I also have three sisters, and we also, I mean, I think, every child takes the place of something, right? Takes the slot, and another child has to go in another direction, and
Right.
then the other direction. I think it's unusual when you have a family that's all doing the same thing,
Yeah, that's
unless
true.
unless it's really encouraged or something, and then you're good to go. So
Yeah.
are you familiar with Rudolph Laban then? The,
No.
oh, you would love that. He's a dancer who developed a vocabulary of movement. So, and Christopher Fettis he's dead now, but was an acting instructor from London. And I don't know if he did that with Laban, but he took Laban's teaching. So it's very much based on Chekhov. So these
Mhm.
different kinds of, a flick is different from a poke, is different from a punch, is different from a slash, is it right? All of these different types of things. And Christopher Fettis included Laban's vocabulary of dance in his dramatic teachings and his teachings
All right.
for actors. And it is really, really complex. I've not studied this to the extent that I should. I've taken maybe two months of it. So I've done
Mhm.
2 intensive months of it, but it's really a study in itself.
Okay, I'll
And,
check it out.
but I think you would like it. Yeah,
Yeah,
especially with your background.
I'll check it out.
So I would love to know how it was to direct a famous actor when you were a kid, or is that what saved you?
When I was a kid? Oh,
Weren't
you
you?
mean Hugo?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't a kid. I was like 26.
Okay.
So I was
A
I was
young,
in my
a
mid
young.
20s. I mean, it was great. It was awesome. I was just so happy to be doing it. And Hugo is one of the most beautiful, lovely, grounded, humble, giving men, I've ever worked with. He was then one of the stars in my film Strangerland. And so, yeah, I was just so grateful to him.
Mm.
It was wonderful. It was inspiring. He's an absolute consummate professional and very deep and very giving. So, yeah, in that way, he made it easy.
So he allowed you the space to direct.
Yeah, no
That's
judgment. He
beautiful.
didn't like
Yeah.
some actors will try and test your fortitude. None of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's
That's
just
why I
like
was asking. Yeah.
right there in there with me. Yeah.
Beautiful. What a
Yeah.
gift.
Yeah, totally. He's a special man.
Yeah. So let me see. So one of the things that you had mentioned with Micah, you had talked about our body's reaction. I think it was fight, flight, fawn, and then there was a fourth one.
Freeze.
Freeze. Fight, flight, fawn, and freeze. And I find that so fascinating. I don't, and when I heard you speaking about it, if this happens, you are fighting. If this happens, you are fawning. And it was so interesting because you said one of the things you said was evidence of like fawning, was just like, okay, fuck it, let's just do it this way.
Mhm.
And I never thought that I was a person to fawn. I thought I was a fighter. And so interesting to hear, to like catch myself out with that in hearing how you were describing it. Could we go over that a bit? Because I think it might be really useful for the actors to hear what it is and maybe recognize themselves and nip it in the bud so they can actually do what they need to do.
Yeah, sure. Cool. Yeah. So my experience is with acting, you need to do a balance of craft, all the preparation of like, what's my accent? What's my gait? How do I walk? How do I move? What's my health? What's my objective? What's my inner obstacles, outer obstacles? Where am I going? Where have I come from? Backstory, needs, wants, fears, etc. You have to do that. But then there's this balance of having to do the personal work, because what I've noticed over many, many years, coming on 30 years of working in this industry, is that in the moment that it counts, when you go up on stage or you're on set and the camera's rolling and it's on you, or you're in the audition room with the casting agent or the director and the producers, in that moment, the fear for the child within safety arises. And they're irrational fears like, am I going to get rejected? Am I going to get laughed at? If I show my anger or my vulnerability, am I going to get yelled at? Am I going to get hurt? They're all irrational fears, but they all arise in the moment that it counts. When your financial life is on the line, when your reputation's on the line, just in the fact of you feeling exposed in front of a crew of people or the rest of the cast or an audience. So in that way, there's this thing that happens, even though your adult self knows that you're safe, that child fear gets neurologically tapped in your body. And then this incredible innate body intelligence, like our bodies are so wise, will come in to protect that child like it did when you were a young child. So when we're a young baby and our like spinal cord is like, the length of my hands here, it's like 2 palms length, right? And that nervous system is dealing with beings that are like 6 foot tall. So already there's like a sense of like, when they raise their voice, am I safe? When they leave the room, are they coming back? Children, especially babies, have no concept of time, which is why when you hear a child, like a young toddler or a young baby scream in hunger, they're screaming like they're going to die, because they have no concept that mum's just gone to the bathroom and she'll be back in a minute. Their experience is, I'm hungry, mum's left, dad's not around, I am going to starve, right? They don't know that there's this sense of that they're going to be okay in the future. So because of that, our innate body intelligence has these 4 miraculous survival mechanisms kick in, and I call them guardians: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So that guardian in that moment for that child self kicks in to protect the child from the feelings of overwhelm. When the nervous system gets overwhelmed is when you see a child crying uncontrollably, right? When you see them like having such a meltdown that their system, and they're like shaking, which is again innate body intelligence, like animals in the wild, they'll shake off trauma, like a child will shake, right? Because their body's trying to release the trauma. So in that overwhelm, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn come in, and that allows the child to survive that moment, to survive, let's say they got yelled at for doing a poo when parents were walking out the door, and now they have to go back and they're going to be late. And so they go, oh, wow, did you have to crap now? And suddenly the child feels like, I better not express myself. Pooing is a form of expression, right? We're expressing like, I need to get rid of this thing. Or like, a parent left to go to work, or a parent left the house and they got divorced, and suddenly they're not seeing their mom or their dad like every day. So all these experiences happen to the child. They feel all those feelings of overwhelm, and then the defense mechanisms, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, come in to save you. The problem is those beautiful guardians, they don't, when you turn 18 and you get your driver's license and you graduate school and you can drink and whatever, you don't get a clean slate and suddenly the guardians don't step in. They just step in every time that child fears for its safety, right? So, you know, that might be like in meeting someone new, or that might be in a romantic arena, or that might be in the work arena, or it might be on set, etc. So in the acting, what it looks like is when the child self is activated. So let's say the other actor is like super talented and your young self feels threatened that I'm not good enough, right? And if I'm not good enough, you know, did your parents go quiet? Did they just go silent on the love? Or did they admonish you? Did they correct you? Did they punish you? Did they hit you? Did they send you to your room? Did they exile you? So any feelings around not being good enough are going to get activated in that moment when you're working with someone else who's, let's say, really talented or really like got their shit together, whatever it is. Or let's say the other actor's really powerful and you grew up with violence. And so suddenly there's this irrational fear of like, oh my God, are they going to hit me? Are they going to hit me? And it's not logical. It's nervous system fear, right? Everything that ever happened to you is recorded in every cell in your body, which is why we have cell memory. We sense memory, we taste something, we hear something, we touch something, we see something, and we get a memory that's activated. That's because everything that happened to us is recorded in all the cells of our body. So anything can trigger us at any time, including in the moment that it counts. So you're in front of the audition, you're on set, you're on the stage, you get triggered, that defense mechanism comes in whether you like it or not. And in the acting, it looks a little bit like if you've gone into fight mode, usually that means you're not fully listening to the other actor. You're already anticipating your lines, you're already jumping ahead, you're in your head often, right? You're not feeling the response, you're not alive to the right now moment. And it does not matter what the other actor gives you in terms of the moment by moment performance, you are going to do it your way. You are going to respond the way that you rehearsed it. You are going to respond the way that feels comfortable and safe to you, which means that there's...
Sorry? That belongs to fight.
That's fight. Yeah. The fight guardian, it's good because it's control, right? Fight is, I'm in control. I've got this. And most people when their fight guardian is up, it's often also because they've had an experience growing up where they can't trust others to be there for them, that they can rely on others, or that they've learned that it's not safe to feel in front of others. So for instance, if they were a young child and they cried and they got hit or they got ridiculed or shamed, they're going to learn it's not safe to show vulnerability in front of others. Now, unfortunately, our nervous systems can't differentiate one emotion from another. So if there's one emotion that's not safe, i.e. vulnerability, our nervous system has to block all emotions. Right? So it's not like, oh yeah, I'm cool with anger, but I can't do vulnerability. You can just let the anger out. It will, to a degree, have to block and shut down to make sure no vulnerability comes out. So then often what you get with the fight guardian is also performative. It's I'll act how I think you want it to be. I'll act my impression of, it's mimicking. I'll go over what I'm feeling and I'll push the performance out, right? And pushing, mostly comes from not feeling good enough, or it comes from I'm not connected to the material, therefore I'm going to fake it, I'm going to push, I'm going to go up, usually in my voice, I'm going to go out of my body, and I'm going to show you what the performance is like and what this experience is like, but I'm not actually
feeling it,
connected or feeling it, right? So that's fight guardian, usually determined by the other actors not listening and they're not changing. If you're working with someone who's in fight guardian and you're giving them all of these different actions and all of these different expressions of yourself, and they just keep doing it the same way, that's because they're in fight mode. And they're not doing it consciously. It's a default defense mechanism to protect the child within. Flight mode looks and sounds like, I want to get the fuck out of here. This feels too much. I got to leave. You know, people often go to flight mode in confrontation. And flight mode in the acting, let's say you're in the scene, you totally know your lines, you totally know the scene, it's all jamming and you've rehearsed it like a mofo and it's all really clear. And then suddenly in the moment that it counts, you get triggered by something. Maybe the director said something between takes. Maybe the other actor did something new in the middle of the take and you suddenly felt unsafe. Flight mode is you leave your body and you forget the lines. Lines that you totally knew off by heart, and you suddenly have no idea where you are up to. That's because you left your body. That's flight. Okay. Freeze looks and sounds like, when I was at home rehearsing, I knew all the lines and I could feel everything. I could cry on cue. I could tap my rage. I could be in my sex energy. It was all flowing. When you freeze in the moment that it counts, when the camera's rolling or you're on stage, in the audition room, I can't feel anything. I'm numb. I'm blocked. There's no feeling going on here. I am literally like faxing or phoning or zooming it in, right? I got nothing. I cannot feel myself. I feel numb. So that's what freeze looks and sounds like.
Yeah.
And then fawn is the most tricky of all the guardians. Because fawn can be camouflaged with, oh, I'm easygoing. Yeah, whatever. Let's just do it however you want. Yep, no problem. Okay. Yep, sure. Okay. Yep, whatever. Do whatever you like. Fawn is the guardian of I give up.
Yeah.
I surrender, and not surrender in a like I surrender and I open, but surrender. I give up my agency and my sovereignty and my inner compass, and I defer to you. And I also give up on trying because you know what, whatever, it's fucked. That's fawn. That's what fawn looks and sounds like. So fawn in nature is, an animal will feel threatened in the wild. Another animal is going to attack it. It will play dead, right? So that the animal thinks it's diseased and sick and won't want to eat it, right? In humans, fawning happens as a survival mechanism if we're under threat of rape. Often people will, as a survival mechanism, it's not conscious, they will fawn, they will allow the rape so they are not murdered.
Yeah.
That child within feels unsafe. So fawn in the acting is I give up, whatever, do it your way. The danger with fawn in the acting is when you have things like sex scenes and you have to have really strong and clear awareness in your own body whilst you're allowing your emotional flow, you have to be cognizant of your boundaries. If you're fawning and you're in that part of your brain where you're just like, whatever, then that's when boundaries can get traversed, which then makes the other actor feel like a predator and like they've trespassed you. And then you get to feel the violation of that. So fawning is a guardian that I tell people, like, if you notice you fawn, you've got to be super diligent as much as you can when you start to hear words like, yep, whatever, yep, do it your way, yep, that's cool. When you're giving up on your needs, your boundaries, your want, your desire, right? Because it can lead to murky, murky territory. So that's how the guardians tend to present themselves. There's a whole lot of little like umbrellas under each guardian.
I'm sure there's a spectrum for all of them as well. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And you may go from one to another. Like my go-to has been numb for like so much of my life. Yeah. And then put me in a confrontation and fight mode comes out, like I can be ferocious. Like if attacked, like, I could take down a dude in the street kind of thing. Like I've so got that. But I also can go into absolute numbness where I can't feel. So it's not like in this work, you're never going to feel your guardian again. It's just that you start to have awareness. And when you have awareness, things can dissolve. When you have awareness, you can say, oh my God, I am in fight mode. My voice is elevated. I'm not in my stomach, in my gut. I'm up in my throat and I'm fucking rah. And now I am no longer open. I'm no longer present to the other actor. I'm not feeling them energetically. I'm tensing. So I'm going to take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to presence my little one and go, now, if I'm in the middle of a take, I'm just going to do the deep breath and I'm going to tell my little one, coming back to you later after the take. And then I'm just going to open, like I'm just going to choose to open and soften. But if I'm like, if I can stop, if I'm not in a take, and in that moment, I'm going to attune to my little one and ask them internally, what happened? What's going on? Did you get scared? Did something happen? I'm going to attune to them because otherwise I'm just going to be operating out of my defense mechanism.
So
Right?
is this the same reaction for all 4 modes, all 4 guardians? So do you take it? So just so I know, I can give them something actionable to do with this. So
Yeah,
it's
the
great
first
that
one,
they can recognize. Yeah.
awareness. Awareness is the
Awareness.
first. So the more you can get familiar with what your guardian looks, sounds, and feels like, the sentences that you go into, the quality of breath, where in your body you're breathing, the sound of your voice, the paradigm shift that you're in, i.e., you don't like me, you're attacking me. Like that's a voice that you can recognize, like, oh, I'm in fight mode and I'm projecting onto you and to everyone else that you don't like me, right? So the more awareness you have, the more capacity and ability you have to pause, take a deep breath, place hands if you can, right, on the body, where in the body is the sensation, and bring presence to it. And then you're going to ask yourself, like, hey, what's going on? What happened? And if you really tune into that little one, you'll often get an answer. I got scared. Blah, 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 touched me, or blah, blah, disrespected me, or I just don't feel good enough, whatever it is. And then your adult self can attune to the child's needs. Okay, what would you need? I'd need a boundary. I'd need for us to get the fight coordinator or the sex supervisor, the IC, to come and re-clarify this boundary because I was not expecting that, whatever it is. Yeah. Maybe like I would need to take a moment to tell my young self, like, you're enough. You're awesome. You've got this. And it's okay if you fuck it up. You can have another take. We're right here. Right here. I'm not leaving you. Like attune to the little one. And for some people, this might sound woo-woo, like, oh, you're going to talk to your little one. But I can tell you this, like, I've been doing this 30 years now, and I see the people that override their young self. And what happens is instead their young self has tantrums. A tantrum can look like this. You're a fucking idiot. Fuck you. How fucking dare you? Da, da, da. But can also look like this. Yep. Yeah. No, I'm fine. Yep. Yeah. No, don't want to talk about it. I'm fine. Withholding, shutting down. That's another form of tantrum. So rather than having to do all those antics, which just take up so much energy and create so much chaos on a film set or in a play, instead, we reparent that young self. And that's our job. All of us had shit happen, all of us. And even if our parents were perfect, we live in a mostly unconscious world. So other interactions with others, shit happened, right? To all of us. And now as adults, we get to go, wow, here's my material. Here's my stuff. Here's all my triggers. And I get to make the best of them. I get to actually use them in service of art. If I'm an actor or a writer or a director or a producer, oh my God, I get to create gold from my shit. How amazing. So like if there's a loving, childlike curiosity towards your stuff, towards your pain, then you can use it in service of something greater. And then rather than it using you and running your life and, creating misery and suffering.
Yeah. there were so many things in there, but I'm just going to go with the last one because it's kind of a good segue. So using the triggers, right? I also totally agree that I think as storytellers have the ability to really take something ugly and hurtful, and it makes me emotional to even think about it, and make it beautiful, and make it somebody else in this world not feel so alone, to let them know, I don't know you, you don't know me, but I hope I'm touching you. I hope you're seeing through this that other people have gone through this as well. So I think that that's one of the things I love most about being an actor is this ability to turn the ugly into art. I think that that's a gift and a blessing, and it's a treasure, and I adore it. But the other thing is, so I love sense memory. And you touched on that a little bit earlier with the sense memory. And how do you feel about that? You're okay with sense memory, right? You use that as well.
Here's the thing. So for me, my number one thing in working with actors is safety.
Yeah.
Right. Never want the actor to feel unsafe or that they're re-traumatizing themselves in any way.
Yeah.
So to use sensory, to be able to use sense memory, which is a really powerful and effective tool, first, one has to develop a relationship with what I would call your witness self. Some people call it your spiritual self. It's the part of you that is consciousness. Your witness is the part of you that knows before you sit down in a sense memory that I'm an actor, I'm in a workshop, I'm in a room, and I'm 30 years old or however old you are, and I'm doing a sense memory exercise. That's your witness. If you didn't have witness and you were suddenly deep in the sense memory, you didn't have your witness present and you're deep in the sense memory and you're 2 years old and you're being molested and you're experiencing that trauma, it is going to feel like you're being re-traumatized because there's no witness there to say, you are safe, this is not happening right now, and that at any moment, if you feel too overwhelmed, too frightened, we can pull you out. So my understanding is to use sense memory. First, we have to cultivate and develop and practice a relationship to our witness self, which is our healthy parent self.
Yeah.
Our adult self that can take care of us, that can titrate, that can slow something down. Sense memory is often done with your eyes closed. So if you started feeling the overwhelm of a trauma memory, or you started going into a flashback, I would be saying, open your eyes, tell me your name, tell me where you are. I would be bringing you right back into the right now moment. Ground your hands, put your hand, do emotional freedom technique, right? Tapping on your arms or on your legs, crossing the midlines of the brain, keeping you in the right now moment. Because otherwise, I never would want the actor to feel like they're using their trauma unsafely and that then they're just left there in the fucking quagmire of their trauma with no way out.
Yeah.
Because for many of us, if we haven't practiced presencing pain body, it can feel so overwhelming, to the child self, it's never going to end. And I don't know how to get out of this. And I don't know, I've touched it. I've opened Pandora's box and I can't get out. I can't get back to my cognitive, able, functioning self who needs to drive the car after the workshop. So in that way, I teach a very strong practice around cultivating witness self, mindfulness, awareness practices, meditation, all of that stuff, so that you are cognitive. And so that when you're in a scene with someone else, and let's say it was an argument scene, and that person suddenly picks up a piece of furniture and goes to throw it at you, and if you'd made a boundary setting prior to the scene starting, that there was to be no throwing of no picking up of furniture, right? And suddenly that actor has broken the boundary. It's your witness that's going to call cut.
Yeah.
Your witness is going to go, okay, now we're unsafe because this person's lost it. They've lost their witness. They are fully in their emotional flow with no cognition of we agreed upon certain boundaries. And when they have lost that cognition, you are unsafe, which is why you need to develop that inner witness that can call cut, that can see a boundaries being broken and stop.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Absolutely. I think for me, I think I didn't have a word for it, but I think I have a good witness. That's not my I don't
Lingo?
know. No, it's not my problem. I'm not sure. But my question was really, what I find is when I mind something, it's just like when you relive something, it loses its impact. So how do you keep a wound alive and healthy? And I mean healthy in all the senses, right? So that I have access to that and that it's not healing too much that I lose it.
Okay. So this is the question I get asked a lot. There's two things. The first thing I would just say as an offering, and I do this in the workshops, is when you speak of something, try and speak of it in the I. When I use a memory, I then lose connection to it, because the more you say I, the more you'll feel. It's like you said you. When you use a memory, you lose connection to it. When we say I, and when we speak, and you speak at a really nice, even pace, but some people speak really fast because they're moving over their feelings. They're talking over their feelings because their feelings are so untenable that they can't feel their feelings. So they have to talk really fast so to not feel them. Right? So I'm giving you probably too many golden tips in this moment that really should be in the workshop. But if you notice that you're speaking fast over your lines, it's because you're not feeling. Slow down, you'll feel more. That's the first one. Second one, always speak in the I, because the more you say I, the more you own it, the more you'll build capacity to feel, the more you'll be able to presence your own feelings by owning your truth. Whenever we own a truth out loud, we feel it more. Then when you sense memory, my experience is this, and this question gets asked all the time. If I use my sense memory, or if I get therapy, then I'll heal it. Then I won't have any fodder for my acting. Not true. Okay. So how it works is when you're using sensory, really deeply go into your feeling body. So feel where the sensations live in your body as you're speaking to them. Again, if you speak it slowly, like when the question is like, where were you? I was in my childhood bedroom. It's late at night. What can you see? I can see the chandelier. I can see the glistening lights. I can see the bedspread that my mom made. It's like pink, white, like as much as you can see it and allow whatever feelings associated with it to arise and be present in your body, sensation in the body. Okay. What does it taste like? Like, what does it smell like? All of that stuff. And then you talk through what happened, what I did, what I said, what they did, what they said. And then at a certain point, you're going to get to how I felt, right? And you do your, visualizing their face and putting your hands all over their face. And I see you as, all of that. And we do sensory really in depth in the workshop. So you would get a taste of it.
Yeah.
But the main thing that's going to connect you is the consequences. What are the consequences in your life of this event? And if you list the consequences in the 7 different areas of your life, spiritual, financial, intellectual, physical, social, familial, and there's one more, career. If you list the consequences, you will find there is so much energy suddenly. right? So like, in my history, my background, there was some childhood trauma that I have done so much work on healing. I feel so integrated about. I feel so much compassion for those involved. But if I want to use it for sensory to fuel a scene, to give me a charge, all I have to do is list the consequences in my life, because what happened got stored in the cells of my body. So as an adult, as a 53-year-old, I can still go to do something, and then those cells get activated and I'm in a fight, flight, freeze response. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. Triggered suddenly, 53 years later, 50 years later, 48 years later, 30 years later. So the consequences of that, and how hard I've had to work with that, how much unconscious pain I then recreated as a result of that trauma, that will give you the fuel, the energy, the feelings behind the charge, right?
Yeah.
You list those consequences out loud, especially in front of other human beings. Like, so I have people listed on the wall. You made me feel small. You made me feel, oh my God, you made me feel like I had no fucking worth. You made me feel like I was a piece of meat. Flesh, not important. You made me feel absolutely insignificant. So if I just do that, I can start to feel it, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not activating that in my daily life because I don't want to activate that neural pathway, right? Unless it's in service of art. When it's in service of a character, or I'm demonstrating in a workshop, I will activate it absolutely 100%. Makes sense? The other thing is,
yeah, go ahead.
Sometimes your young self can get just absolutely exhausted and be like, I don't want to go back to all this pain. Makes sense. You've got to balance this deep work with self-care. A lot of playtime, artist dates for your young self, beautiful time in nature, really good sleep, really good food, really good structure so that the child feels safe and held, right?
Yeah.
Words of affirmation, hugs, gentleness, kindness, balance. So you can't expect your emotional instrument to just give and give and give and give. You have to give to it. You have to give back to that young self. You have to reward your body. Massages, float tanks, lying down on the earth, going for a swim in the ocean, swimming in a lake, beautiful hiking, playing with an animal. You've got to replenish. And a lot of actors just push through. They push that inner child, and eventually the inner child goes, fuck off. I'm done. I'm exhausted. Leave me alone. And they shut down. So we don't want that. We want to be able to have a relationship where all of the parts in us feel met, heard, loved, nourished, right? So self-care, Ellen Burstyn, who's the Academy Award winner for Requiem for a Dream, I heard her speak once at a workshop, and she said, acting is the willingness to suffer, only it gets easier. And I love that quote, and I have my own interpretation based on the way I teach, which is the willingness to suffer is to do the sense memory, right? Things like sense memory is to do the personalization work, is to do the deep visualization trauma work, right? Is to do the block removal work, the emotional block removal. The getting easier is because we do things like self-care, is because we take care of that young self. So the more you practice it, the easier it gets. But the more you form a relationship of love, kindness, compassion, beautiful acknowledgement, validation of that part of yourself, the artist, the child, the imagination, the trauma, the more they will be like, yeah, okay, I feel seen. I'm going to show up for you. Yeah, you can use that wound from when I was 5. Yeah, let's go there, because I know you're going to take care of me. But if you don't take care, if you just obliterate them with alcohol or drugs or workaholism or over-exercise or whatever is your, poison, they're just going to shut down or be so spent that they've got, I got nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. So when it comes to feeling safe on set, and I can just imagine that you make a very safe set for your actors, and a very safe coaching environment as well. But I've been doing this a long time too, and I've experienced both. And what do you have a method, or when the actor, maybe he's gone into fight or fawn or something like that, so I'm not getting what I need, which makes me feel unsafe, because all of a sudden I'm feeling like, oh, I can't do what I need to do. Or as you had said in your interview with Micah, where we can sense when what we're going to be giving might be too much for someone. And so that shuts us down, if I understood that correctly.
So is your question, how does one deal with an actor when they're shut down on set?
Yes. Thank you.
So, well, firstly, again, awareness. So if I sense that an actor is shutting down, I firstly want to have my awareness intact. That's like, oh, wow, they're shutting down, they're closing. Huh. What might have happened for them that made them feel unsafe? So I'm going to ask myself that so I can find some humanity and some compassion for what they might be going with. Even if they're in fight mode and they're in like, fuck you, or, you know, they're like getting shitty with others, or something's triggered, right? So if I can see that in that moment, their child self is really activated, I'm going to know that I need to presence their child.
You as the director.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well,
in
what
that,
do you suggest you do as an actor who I don't have that kind of training. I don't know that I would necessarily recognize what, maybe now that I've heard it, because now I have an awareness around it. But I don't have the experience to soothe that child for someone else. Do you know what I'm saying?
so perhaps you do, because you're an adult, right?
I'm a mom. Yeah.
You're a mom. And whether you're a mom or not, you're an adult.
Yeah.
And if you have the consciousness of like, wow, they're really triggered. They're really in their stuff. They've either completely withdrawn or they're completely shut down, like they're frozen, they can't feel, they're not giving me anything, they can't open, or they're in fight mode, or they're giving up. So as the other actor, you could be like, hey, how you doing? What's happening? And just like make your voice really unthreatening, very presencing. I yeah, I'm feeling you. How you doing? Rather than tell them what they're feeling, but just like ask them, how you feeling? And often like, we're so like, you know, everyone on set, my experience, not everyone, but most people feel a lot of pressure. They fear their safety, you know, like, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to get in trouble? Am I going to get fired? Am I going to fuck up? Am I going to waste everyone's time? Blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of like fight, flight, freeze, fawn, just float, bouncing around everywhere. So if I just take a moment to look them in the left eye, that will connect them with their right brain, which is their emotional brain.
Okay.
Left eye to left eye, which is right brain to right brain. And just be like, hey, how you doing? Or like you could give them some humanity. Like, I see that this is really intense right now. There's a lot of pressure on us. Wow. Whew. Maybe you like move your body and just like blah, take a deep breath and kind of camaraderie of like, I see you, brother. I see you, sister. I see you, sibling. Like, this is a lot, right? You could also say, if you recognize that there was something that you did, not to say you're at fault, but maybe there was something that you did that you realized they got really triggered, like they flinched or something, how their guardian's up. You could say to them, hey, I'm aware that, you know, when I made that really big sound, that was a lot. So I just want to acknowledge that, you know. And so it's like you're bringing humanity to them. Now, that doesn't mean you're sucking up to them or you're not acknowledging yourself. But if in that moment you have a little more capacity than they do, Like you've got a little bit more of your adult present, then they're like totally triggered and in their child and in their mechanism, then you can afford to just bring some compassion, some awareness, some kindness in that moment.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. So I've got two more questions.
And one other one. If they're completely frozen, a really good thing to do is just say, hey, could you do this for me? Could you just make a big sound with me? So often when an actor feels like pressure and on the spot and like they're not getting it, if you offer them a tool, they might feel like, oh, fuck, I'm really not getting it now. They're trying to help me. But if you say to them, look, could you do this for me? Could you help me? Can you just make a really big sound with me? I just need to clear my heart. And then you go, ah. And if they do it too, it'll open their nervous system.
Wow. Okay. That's a
and
great.
That way you just helped them open. They don't even know it, but then suddenly it's like they're connected again. So big sound with movement. Doesn't have to have words, just a sound.
I love that. The film I did in Ojai, actually, I was playing a mom who was dying and had a really close relationship with my son. And the scene where I die, he was supposed to cry on cue, and he had nothing. And he was very good at crying and very emotionally available. But he had nothing. And I remember, in the time, I didn't know what else to do. So I just said, look, that's how some people react when they're overwhelmed with grief. Mm-hmm. So just accept that this is how you're reacting, and that's okay. Yeah. But it wasn't, because he had his heart so set on crying in the sea, and boy, did he cry afterwards. Right. But he couldn't get there. And I wish I had known that back then, just to help him out. But I actually think, because he did so much crying in so many other scenes, that it might have been nice that he didn't cry. Mm-hmm. If he had just allowed it to be what it was. Like, I feel nothing. Yeah. My mom is dead and I feel nothing.
Yeah, shock.
Yeah. So I had one more question, two more questions. You said how you do life is how you do acting, which I love. I agree. But I find it's like, we as actors and human beings, they don't always go together, right? Because as human beings, it's in our DNA not to stand out, not to be vulnerable, not to show our weaknesses, not to always allow people to affect us. And that is our bread and butter as actors, is to allow that. So it's finding that. So I guess maybe first explain it. What do you mean?
Well, I disagree with what you're saying, because I don't believe it's in our DNA. I believe it's in our programming, in our conditioning.
Yeah.
I believe our innate knowing is that we are worthy and we are love and we deserve to be seen and heard and valued. We deserve respect. I believe that's our innate knowing, which is why when you see a young baby and they're hungry, they will scream because they feel worthy of being fed.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So the innate, like knowing in the body is that we are lovable and we're worthy of expressing ourselves. It's the conditioning and the social stuff and the cultural stuff and the parental stuff and the religious stuff that comes on top that then skews our trusting of that innate body wisdom.
So I guess I'm thinking just in terms of, from the time we were amoebas to animal, right? It's always been dangerous to stand out. I guess that's what I'm not speaking about the heart, the emotions, worthy or not worthy, just that throughout our prehistoric history, it's been dangerous to stand up.
So I would say that what's happening in this moment is that your experience is that if I stand out, it's dangerous. And for someone else, it might be, if I don't stand out, I will be invisible and I will be forgotten. So I better take up space. I better be the best. I better achieve. I better like stand out. So that would be my first thing, just to offer, like, it'd be great, I would say, internal exploration to look at, like, when I, as a child, stood out, what happened? How did I get treated? How did I get met in those moments? The expression, how you do life is how you do acting, came from a really incredible actor that I work with named Ika Darville. And I so love that expression. And my translation of that is, if you, in your life and how you lead your daily life, are not comfortable and owning and feeling and able to express certain feelings and touch certain feelings in the depth of you, then how can you possibly authentically and truthfully channel those feelings in service of what a character's going through? Can't feel it in your own life, you will have to mimic.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So in that way, the more personal work you do alongside your craft, your character analysis, your voice work, your movement work, etc., your accents, everything, so given circumstances, the more personal work you do, the more access you're going to have to more parts of your being. More emotional channels are going to be online and available to you. You can use more memories. You can use more of your play inside yourself, more archetypes. But that's because we do the personal work. We do somatic-based work with sound and movement and words to express. And sometimes without words, with just the sound and the movement. And that will give you more access to more of your feelings, and your feelings, all your feelings, your rage, your vulnerability, your insecurity, your shame, your lostness, your desire, your sexuality, they're all your birthright, all of them. So my encouragement to people is always keep doing the deep personal work alongside your craft, and then you will have a balance of those two, right? You'll have your left brain and your right brain working together in balance.
That's beautiful. So my last question, the name of the podcast is Act Bold. I know you've led an unconventional, bold life, but we all have our standards of bold, right? So what is something that, when was a time in your life that you acted bold and had an unexpected, or, you know, a revelation or something that you weren't expecting that came from it?
So I love that your podcast is called Act Bold. That's so awesome. And a time in my life where I did something that was really bold was, I mean, there's many different times, but an example that comes to mind is, like, I was pitching a documentary to 500 people, and I was being filmed pitching it, and I was being screened like 30 foot tall. So I had like the screen behind me plus 500 people looking at me. And I had rehearsed this speech that I had to give before I showed some clips from the footage I'd already been shooting. And, you know, my career was at stake. I had thousands and thousands, hundreds and thousands of dollars at stake of trying to win this pitch. And so when I went out there, I was very conscious to allow myself to feel what I was saying. So when I spoke about the people in the film, the real people in the film, I allowed myself to bubble up with tears. I allowed myself at one point to like express, like, one of the characters had murdered people. And so I expressed in their rage. So I took really big risks to show and reveal a lot of emotion in the right now moment to 500 people. And I won, and I got awarded hundreds of thousands of dollars and went off and made that documentary, Naked on the Inside. And so, you know, that was a time where it was just trusting, like, okay, this is going to push my comfort zone, but I want to do this in service of these people, the people in the I was representing. So I know for myself, whenever I have something that's bigger than me, a cause that's bigger than me, bigger than my life, bigger than my little world, it gives me the most mighty Herculean courage.
Yes. Yeah, that's so helpful to have our why be bigger than we are.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Kim, this has been such a pleasure. I'm so looking forward to the workshop with you, especially even more so now.
Oh,
so
good.
yeah,
I look forward to having you. And thank you for your really interesting and also sensitive, and your open questions. It was really beautiful to collaborate with you today.
Wasn't that an amazing conversation? Kim was just so generous with her knowledge and her insights. I was especially fascinated by the fight, flight, fawn, and freeze reactions that can pop up when we are not feeling safe on set or on the stage. So let me know in the comments which one of those stops you from doing your best work once in a while. Hopefully not all the time. And if you happen to be in Berlin in September, you should definitely apply to be a part of Kim's workshop, Raw Truth. I will be there and we can meet in person. That would be amazing. You can find out all about Kim's workshop on the website for Down Under Berlin Film Festival. And until next time, you stay your bold and beautiful self. Bye-bye.